The role of the government, in this case, the government and the private sector have to play a greater role through an altruism. Of course, the government can play an important role because they spend billions or trillions of dollars to correct the market after the crisis has taken place. Why not introduce discipline in the market and then solve the problem of subprime borrowers by introducing some kind of a system where they are able to get loans at an affordable rate on conditions that are humane. It is very strange that the financial system charges a low rate of interest to the rich people who can afford to pay a higher rate, but it charges a higher rate of interest to poor people who can afford to pay only a lower rate of interest. So there has to be some kind of an arrangement whereby these people are able to get loans at affordable rates with conditions that are bearable. Also, it is necessary that in case such borrowers face difficulties, not due to their negligence or unwillingness to repay their debt, but because of circumstances over which they have no control. In that case, they must be given respite. Not that as soon as they have missed 2 or 3 installments, their house goes into foreclosure and is auctioned at giveaway prices. In the case of auctioning, see, the bank's interest is to recover its own money. It is not interested in recovering money that is just for the person who has borrowed to purchase the house. If the house costs $1 million and the person has already paid, say, about $600,000 or $700,000, then the bank's interest is to recover the balance. So it will be interested in selling the house at that particular price, whatever remains to be paid. And then, of course, in this case, there are a number of bargain hunters who go around and try to buy the houses at the lowest price they can. The person who owns the house delivers the keys with tears in his eyes. In any society which cares for justice cannot allow this kind of a system. So, this is where Islamic finance can help. It has the system of zakat and awqaf, from where it may be possible either to lend to such people or to subsidize the rate of return, not interest, but the cost. The markup over the cost of the good as a result of the time value of money. This of course requires some detailed presentation, for which we do not have time. I have elaborated it in my paper where you can read it. However, Islamic finance is still in its infancy. The profit and loss sharing has a small share in total financing, and debt has a major share. Every effort is being made by the financial institutions to transfer the risk to the borrower or the lessee, and they try to take bear as little risk as possible. This is, of course, because there is an absence of shared institutions to support the system. And also because the objectives of the Sharia are not taken into account while the jurists or the Sharia advisors of banks give their verdicts. This system needs to be reformed, and also a number of institutions that are necessary for the efficient and equitable operation of the Islamic financial system need to be created. Next. Now, of course, all the conditions laid down by Islam may not be acceptable to the international financial system. After all, the system has existed in other societies for a long period, and while they would like to reform the system, they may not wish to accept everything that Islam has to say. Therefore, there are some things that need to be done by them, because some of these things are a part of their own heritage. First of all, they need to raise the share of equity in total financing and lower that of debt. This is, of course, now being emphasized by a number of scholars in the Western world. Henry Simons wrote about this immediately after the Second World War. Mrs. Joan Robinson did this in the UK. Henry Hyman Minsky has also emphasized this, and Professor Rogoff of Harvard has also said that with a better balance between debt and equity, the rise in risk and sharing would be greatly balanced and financial crisis sharply prevented. Another thing that needs to be done is to control leverage. During the capital, during a number of the crises, the leverage has tended to be very high, and it needs to be controlled to the extent to which it will not make the financial system unstable. Even in the case of the borrowers, the leverage should be controlled to the extent to which it is possible for them to repay the loan. Allowing them to borrow far more than what they will be able to repay is going to lead to crisis. Allow credit primarily for promoting development of the real sector, not for speculation and gambling. Require banks to hold debt until maturity. This was the system that prevailed for a long time, even in the Western world. It is only over the last few decades that the debt is not being held until maturity. And this is going to ensure careful underwriting. If, however, the debt is to be sold, there must be full transparency along with the right of recourse for the ultimate purchaser of the debt. And if this is also not considered to be desirable, then the issuer must hold a meaningful proportion of the debt, as has been suggested even by Mr. Greenspan, so that the lender will be careful in lending. The credit default swaps should not be allowed to become instruments. In fact, all hedging and derivatives must be used primarily to provide protection to those who are uh, conducting transactions in the real world, and not to be used as instruments for wagering. All financial institutions must be regulated, not just the commercial banks. Of course, the commercial banks may need more regulation than others, but they should all be regulated to the extent to which it will be possible to make them safe and sound. Then some arrangement must be made to enable the subprime borrowers to get credit. This is, of course, essential for every society which claims to stand for justice. If this is not done, then the rich will become richer and the poor will become poorer, and ultimately there will be a social crisis which may be even far worse than the financial crisis. The Quran has clearly warned that وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ حَمَلَ ظُلْمًا. He is destroyed who commits injustice. And so every society has to ensure that credit is available to the poor people to enable them to start business or to buy some of the essential goods and services they require, of course in accordance with their ability to repay later on. So Islamic finance can only provide a fresh way of thinking. If a number of these suggestions are not adopted, I am sure that the next crisis will be far more severe than the present one. Thank you.